Hi guys, it's Misty. Welcome back to another card video. Today I'm going to share with you what I made for this week's Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge. The theme is Anything Goes, and we are featuring products from Concord and Ninth. And I chose to use this adorable little monster from the Monster Love stamp set. I missed out on the Monster Hugs stamp set that was available during Stamptember, which I'm really bummed about, but I was really excited when I saw that Concord and Ninth made another stamp set featuring this adorable monster. So again, this one's called Monster Love, the stamp set, and I'm stamping him out on some Arches cold press watercolor paper, and I'm using the VersaFine ONYX black ink because it's watercolor friendly, and I'm going to be doing some watercoloring. I went ahead and stamped him out twice, and now I'm stamping this little heart that looks like he's holding, and I'm going to stamp that twice too. The stamp set's great. It has a couple different options, like the other monster has a couple different arm options, and like this particular monster, if you don't use the heart with the little fingers, it looks like his hands are behind his back, so it's really cute. I decided to use the Peerless watercolor bonus pack today. Haven't used this one in a while, so look at all these beautiful colors this pack has. I gotta remember to use these more often. I've decided to use the peacock blue, and then I'm gonna use the rose red for the heart, but I was really torn between a teal monster. I love the purple too, so I almost used that color. There's many different options. I'm taping my paper down to a cutting board, and I'm using the Delicate Surface FrogTape to do so. I prefer this tape over the blue painter's tape because this tape you don't have to stick it to your arm or your shirt to, to make it not so sticky. And I've never had any problems with this tape tearing my paper. So this is pretty much all I ever use. I'm just going to start out with a really light layer of color. I haven't used these watercolors in a long time, and I just didn't want to get too much color before I was ready for it. So I'm just kind of getting the feel for this color, and then I'll go back and add some darker areas. I was trying to add some shading where I thought shading would be, but it didn't really work out for me. I don't know, I didn't like the way it looked in the end. So I'm going to add some colored pencils over it in the end, but he was a little too cartoony for me. I just don't watercolor very often. One of these days, I would love to dedicate some time to learning how to watercolor. Maybe when my kid graduates in 6 years, I'll have time. Okay, I had to leave this whole part in here because I just think it's so cool looking. This heart turned out exactly how I wanted it to look. I didn't want it to be one solid color, so I added the water first, and my plan was just to kind of let the color do its thing. But I wanted the entire heart to be covered, so I'm going to go ahead and cover it first and get in all those little areas around the edge. And then I'll come in and drop some more color. But it just kind of, I don't know, it kind of reminded me of tie-dye. I thought it was perfect. It's mesmerizing watching it. I was trying to be careful around the edges because I wasn't sure if that teal color was completely dry yet, and I didn't want it to bleed. So I was being really careful. And then I just decided to use a gray for the horns and the fingers. I didn't want to get too many colors going on, so I thought gray was perfect. But it kept getting a little too dark for me, so you'll see me drop some color and then I'll quickly dab it up with a paper towel. These colors didn't fade very much when they dried. A lot of watercolors will fade quite a bit once it dries, but these ones didn't. I like that about these. And I'm just going to ground him with some pumice stone distress ink. This color is very interesting. I don't know if I had a different color on the paintbrush, but the ground kind of, I don't know, it looks like it has a little bit of purple in there. It looks like it has a little bit of the scattered straw color. And then some gray, like fog gray. So I thought it was perfect for a ground. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of a shadow underneath him. Got to be careful. I don't want it to look like he peed himself. At one point it was kind of looking that way, so. Now for my sky, I wanted a really light blue, so I'm going to go ahead and just put some water down first. And then for the sky, I actually used a color in the Peerless Watercolor. It's the Complete Edition book. So I actually used both. I forgot about that. But the color is sky blue. So I just watered it down quite a bit. And then I'm going to add another layer in a minute. It's a little too light. I covered the monster up with a Post-it just because I didn't want to accidentally go over him with the water brush. So I just dried it really quick so I didn't have to sit and wait for it to dry. And then here I'm just going to add another layer of color. And this is, at one point I thought I would try to add a cloud in the sky. But again, I don't watercolor enough to know what I'm doing, so the idea went just as quickly as it came. And then I realized too that my sentiment was going to be right there, so I just added some color over the top of it. Turned out beautiful. So for the first part of the sentiment, I'm just using Nina, I think this is 110 pound cardstock. And this is not going to be pretty, let me tell you, but when cutting out these small word dies like this, you're never going to see how well it's blended. You just won't. So you'll see in the end, you can't even tell how ugly this was. So that was Spiced Marmalade and Squeezed Lemonade Distress Inks. And then I'm going to cut the Happy die from Lawn Fawn. It coordinates with the Happy, Happy, Happy stamp set. So I'm not sure if that's what the die is called too, but it just said on the package, coordinates with Happy, Happy, Happy. So I just recently got this Sizzix Sidekick, and I have no idea why I waited so long to get this little thing. This is so nice to have right on hand. Which might sound really lazy because my die cutting machine's not that far away, but it's just, it's really nice to have right on my desk. Especially for these little die cuts like this. Now, I hadn't planned on using the stamp portion of this, but it just seemed like it was missing something. The die cut was just missing something. I thought I could just use the word happy like this, but I don't know. I just didn't like the way it looked, so I'm going to use my Misty to line up that stamp the best I can. Then using my Simon Says Stamp clear ink, I stamped it, and then I'm going to use some Ranger Superfine white embossing powder. What I didn't do though is I forgot to run my heat tool across it and make sure that it was completely dry. I think it dawned on me right when I was pouring the embossing powder on it, but it wasn't too bad. Just used that old paintbrush and I wiped away the excess. I'm also using the birthday stamp from the same stamp set. Thought it was a nice size for this card. And I have a piece of scrap black cardstock. This is I think it's the Basil Licorice Twist cardstock. So after I use my anti-static powder there, I'm going to go ahead and stamp this. And usually I try to line it up at the bottom, so I only have to cut one side. But I just recently got the Sentiment Labels by Simon Says Stamp, and I wanted those for a while, but I just didn't want to spend the money on them because, I can use my paper trimmer and cut it down to size, but I'm telling you, it's really nice to have these sentiment labels here, because you could just line it up with the sentiment. You don't have to, I didn't have to worry about stamping it straight on the paper, and then you just take it and you line it up right with the word that you're cutting out. So I think these are a nice purchase to have in your stash as well. And I actually cut it out twice. I used the smallest size, and then I did the next size up just to kind of compare the two. And I ended up sticking with the smaller size. I liked this one better. You can see the other one I cut right above there. And it has the pieces that you can make the banner ends, but I wasn't liking it for this one, so I just cut it off and did a diagonal on one end. So I'm just going to use my paper trimmer and cut this down to 4 by 5 1/4. And then I'm going to add it to a black background. Just using a tape runner here to attach it to my card base, and I'm doing a side folding card base for this one. And then off camera, I cut my card front down with my little monster on it, using a rounded rectangle infinity die by Hero Arts. And I'm really liking these dies right now because there's many different sizes, and I love it. Rounds the corners perfectly. If you don't have this particular die, you can use a corner rounder too. Corner rounder, is that what they're called? Corner punch? Corner rounder. That's what I'm calling it. You know what I mean. And then I'm just using some Tombow Mono multi-liquid glue to glue my card front down. And there was a way easier way to do this, but I didn't think about it until just now. So I wanted to pop up the word happy. I took the small foam squares and I cut them in half, and some of them I even cut them in quarters, and then I put them all over the back of my happy word here. And I don't know why I just thought of it, but I probably could have just cut the word out with craft foam using the same die and glued it to the back of it, and it would have looked exactly the same, and I could have saved 20 minutes. These things I forget. There's so many different techniques and so many different ways to do the same thing that I forget about them sometimes. So I'm taking the long route home, I guess. But I really wanted it popped up, so I'm happy with it, even if it took me forever. And see, you can't even tell how funky my ink blending was. The spiced marmalade and the squeezed lemonade. Remember how ugly it was when I put them on paper? You can't even tell. It's a nice part about smaller word dies like this. You don't have to spend much time on it. I'm just taking a little glue, and I'm going to glue the birthday part of the sentiment right onto the background there. And just to be sure, I'm going to use my little T-square ruler here. Make sure I have it straight. And I was pretty darn straight. And then to top it off, it was a little too plain, so I couldn't decide between the ONYX Jewels by Studio Katia or the black Nuvo Drops. And in the end, I decided to go with the black Nuvo Drops. No particular reason why. They both looked really good. But I wanted to kind of just add something off to the side there. And then I didn't stop there. I had to add something else too. I just love the big heart so much that I decided to add some little hearts too. So I took a die I have from My Favorite Things. Oh, it's one of their blueprints. I can't remember which one, but I'll have a link to it in the description below. And it has these teeny tiny little hearts in the set. So I cut some of those out with a old background ink blended background that I didn't use which they were kind of this pretty pink color, so I cut them out and I'm just adding some glitter to them. Yeah, you see how small those are? They're tiny. But I think they were perfect for this. So once I kind of figure out where I want them, then I'll go over them with the Crystal Glaze by Nuvo. And I did this off camera. I didn't even think to record it, but I went over my monster with my Prismacolor pencil and just added some fur strokes to make it a little bit more, not realistic, but just to give it a little bit of interest, I guess. And then I also added the same crystal glaze to the big heart. And that wraps up this video. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. All of the supplies that I used are listed and linked in the description below. And you can head over to my blog for more information, but be sure to visit the Simon Says Stamp blog as well to link up your projects. If you like this video, I'd love it if you'd like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week with another video. Thanks. Bye.